Hey, welcome friends. Hello. Here we are. What's the date today? 6th of what month are we in? July. I'm usually running a month behind. Here we are. It's the 6th of July. It's 2022. This is Chat with Matt. It's 9 a.m. on a Wednesday morning here in New Zealand. The sun is shining. It rained overnight. But we have blue sky right now and it's relatively cold. Not too bad in the scheme of things, I guess. Yeah, how can we help you? What's going on? Chat with Matt, half an hour to talk about whatever's going on. I do have some requests written in ahead of time, which is always exciting for me. I have a direction to go in and I don't need to fluff around for too long. I put on a post of me there standing in the Komodo Islands, actually in Indonesia, on a boat that we had hired, and we were sailing around, going to different islands and doing all sorts of awesome stuff. Swam with manta rays, saw the Komodo dragons, of course, went to Pink Beach, all the must-dos. But yeah, what a way to see the world in a slow-moving boat, similar to what we do up in the Bay of Islands here in New Zealand with a yoga retreat. But anyway, I think it was actually an MP3 that I produced that said "Speak past your doubts." Potentially, I can't remember. But anyway, that's the little message on the bottom of this poster, is to speak past your doubts. Because a lot of people think that to be confident we have to be doubtless. We have to eradicate the doubts, and that is a pointless mission to try and do, because no one on this planet, I believe, is without doubt, unless they're really, really stupid. In which case, maybe they are completely up themselves to a point where they have no doubts. And no doubt that person is very dangerous. But most of us with any degree of intelligence and heart-centered empathy have doubts, right? We are continually analysing what we are doing and are concerned that perhaps our actions have the potential to quote unquote go wrong, whatever that looks like, whether that's a bad outcome for us or a bad outcome for someone else, or in some other way our actions are judgeable as wrong. Because the point is why doubts never go away is because there are so many different points of view, so many different perspectives you could take to look at any action that you do. And undoubtedly any action you do, doesn't matter, cleaning your friggin' teeth in the morning, if you are the point of view of the dentist, who have very specific ideas about how you should clean your teeth, you're probably doing it wrong, right? So you can be there cleaning your teeth and have doubts whether you're doing the right thing, right? This is the point. It doesn't matter what we choose to do. There will always be a perspective from someone on this planet or some entity on this planet that could consider what you're doing as quote unquote wrong. And therefore, we're always kind of weighing that up to some degree. The point is whether it's overly influencing us. That's what's important. And so this speak past your doubts. Good morning, Sister Jill. Good morning, Debbie. Happy Wednesday to you too. So the point is we always have doubts, and our opportunity is to feel the doubts, weigh them up, and then to act anyway, because most of the time when we look at what we're doubting, it is some form of reflection of fear-based indoctrination left over from the past. And we don't need to take so much notice of the doubts, but at the same time, we don't need to argue them away before we can be confident enough to go forward with our actions, whether that is speaking or expressing something or taking certain actions. So that was that little meme that I popped on to request questions and input for this. Anyway, Sister Natalie wrote in and said, would love some thoughts on how to support my 14-year-old. A kid in her class is targeting her and putting her down in front of her class. How could she respond? Yeah, so when responding to bullies and people who are seeking attention of others by, using bullying tactics or derogatory humor or whatever they're using to target someone as the point of their putting someone else down to lift themselves up, basically, in the eyes of others. It's beneficial for the victim to understand that the perpetrator is doing so out of pain, out of their own discordance, because not so that you feel sorry for them and not so that you allow them to keep doing what they're doing, so that you can actually use that to de-escalate the situation. Quite often, if you call a bully out on the fact that they're acting from their own pain, especially if you do it in front of others, the situation very quickly disentangles, right? Because they have lost the game, basically, which is to elevate themselves by putting someone else down. When it's turned around and showed, especially in front of others, that their actions is actually a sign that they are down, then they can't use it very easily to put you down to lift themselves up, because you've already shown them that their actions is actually indicating that they're, wounded or in pain or, not quote unquote right or good or healthy, right? So now it's hard for a 14-year-old when they're being targeted in class to actually turn around and say, hey, are you okay? Because the behavior you're doing is sort of indicating that you're very wounded or something like that. Or, hey, what you're doing is really, hurtful to me. Why are you doing that? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? As opposed to sort of, so it's not attacking the bully from the same sort of level of fear and degradation that they are perpetuating towards you. When you're dealing with a hate attack, the best way to respond is from love. Now, love with strength, though. So it's not about, just being compassionate and so, I see you're wounded and you're acting out badly. No, you have to call them out and say that their behavior is not acceptable. Hey, what you're doing is really hurting me. Why are you doing that? Why would you do this to anyone? What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Have you been abused? When you say that to someone, have you been abused? Like, at first I'll go, no, well, you say, well, what is your excuse for this bad behavior then? Right? When you put it back on them that their behavior is damaged, right? That they lose the game of what they're trying to achieve through the bullying. So, again, not easy for a 14-year-old to pull that off. It's not easy for me to pull that off sometimes, right? Especially if you're being triggered by the abuse, right? If you're being triggered by the attack, you want to get defensive, and from that defensive place, you want to attack back with anger and more hatred. And it's not about hating them. It is actually really, really caring, right? When you show empathy in the way that you say, what's wrong with you? Are you okay? Have you been abused? Right? Not because you're trying to make them wrong, but because you are basically from the space of, I recognize that the behavior that you are doing is coming from your pain. And while it's really hurting me, I'm not prepared to allow that to keep continuing. But at the same time, can we help you? Because you need a different way to find your comfort, not in bullying others. So yeah, it's a conversation that you can have with your 14-year-old, definitely, to help give them some tactical responses in ways of speaking out, to defend herself, not from fear and self-doubt, but from real empathy and power, that she can see that this bully is a wounded individual and needs help. And even saying that, hey, I think you need some help. You need some help. The way that you're behaving is not socially acceptable. It's really hurtful to me. Maybe you should get some help. And you have to do it in front of others, because then she will regain, with that sort of response, she will regain a lot of support from the class, a lot of support from others who will recognize that is the truth. That this other person, the way they're behaving, is coming from a wounded place, and that they do need help. And from there, potentially the wheels can be set in motion for that person getting help, and for that behavior being diffused before it becomes a lifelong habit of being a bully and a narcissistic abuser. Because all narcissistic abuse basically comes from wounded people, right, who haven't had their abuse tended to. Anyway, hopefully that helps. Sister Zena wrote in, and I'm very happy for someone else might have some other really good tactics. Please feel free to comment under Natalie's comment, and potentially you have more experience with this and have some other good tactics to deal with it. Jill said, to get through the quagmire of morals around my house moving shenanigans, I decided that I will do what I can so long. I'm not going to try and read that there. Just doing a refresh here, and I'll quickly read it here before I move on to Sister Zena's question. To get through the quagmire of morals around my house moving shenanigans, I decided that I will do what I can so long as I can live with myself. I'll do what I can so long as I can live with myself. I have ditched my estate agent and hence my purchaser. However, I have no misgivings about disappointing the guy, as he has been manipulating me for months. And when he thought he'd bullied me into submission, I've called his bluff and walked away from him. I just now have to trust the universe is going to finally have the correct buyer for my house appear now. I am working on manifesting. Yeah, just relax, Jill. Just relax and trust. Ultimately, that's, don't work too hard on manifesting. Just keep your energy aligned with you having the best outcome. And if that means staying in your current house, then we have to accept that, right? We have all sorts of ideas about what is our best outcome, and then we have to let go and let God. Because if it ain't going to happen, then obviously there's a reason for staying. And if you can maintain that attitude, not a defeatist attitude, but an empowered acceptance of outcomes attitude, then everything will flow through much more effectively for you. So yeah, basically the way to work on manifestation is not to try too hard with it. It's just to keep your heart aligned and your mentality aligned with you trusting that the best outcomes are unfolding for yourself. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back here and we'll read Sister Zena's question. Hi Matt, what's a good way to connect more with the flow of moving into alignment and creating more experiences that resonate with the reality you would like to experience? Well, that's kind of interesting because that's pretty much exactly what we're talking about with Sister Jill. What's a good way to connect more with the flow of moving into alignment? Relax, right? I know that's a really boring answer, a really predictable answer for me, but basically that's the guts of it. The way to connect more with the flow of moving into alignment is to relax into it. It's not to try too hard. And at the same time, of course, maintaining consistency. God, I've got notifications binging up everywhere. Maintaining consistency with your remembering, bringing consistency with your attention on your intention, right? Consistency with the attention on your intention. So remembering consistently what your intended outcome is, which is basically to be in the flow and to be in alignment, right? And to remember the reality that you would like to experience, right? To dream it, to bring that dream into front of mind consistently, not from a place of comparison of this is what I want and look at what the shit I've got, right? Don't use it don't use it antagonistically as, oh, I really want this and I'm dealing with this, right? When can I have what I want sort of attitude towards the universe is not beneficial. You have to really it's going to serve you to come from a space of confidence that you know that you are moving into your desired outcome, and allow yourself to be curious as to how that's going to happen. Allow yourself to be curious, allow yourself to be excited, allow yourself to be awed by the fact that somehow the universe is going to get you from where you are to where you want to go, and that you don't need to mentally micromanage that process. Your job is to stay relaxed, in trust, and in consistent alignment with the energies of the outcome you want. The more that you can relax into happiness, trusting that you're soon going to have your desired outcome, the faster your desired outcome is going to have. The more that you stay contracted and fear-based and angry and frustrated that you don't have your outcome yet, the longer that you will stay stuck without your outcome. Right? I know it's hard, and it sounds a little bit false to choose to be happy before we've got what we desire, but that's the best way to get what you desire. So the point is not to try and use it manipulatively either, right? If you're just trying to fake it because you think this is going to work, then that doesn't really happen. You actually have to really back the trust, to really trust that you trust, and to be happy despite the fact that you don't have it, right? To really foster a deep sense of trust and faith that it is coming to the point where you can be happy despite the fact that it hasn't got here yet. That helps you stay relaxed and to stay flowing and to stay open and to stay curious as to how it's all going to unfold. And to be then in that state, when you're curious about how it's going to unfold, you are much more open to receiving the flow of guidance that's going to help you get there, right? Because you're actually looking for it, not from a contracted place, but from a curious place. And that is much, 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 much more easy to just flow with it when you don't make it so important that you have to get it right. When you're just already trusting that you can't fuck it up. It's going to happen, right? It's going to flow to you. Doesn't matter what actions you choose, you're going to get your outcome. Then you're much more likely, right, to actually follow a pathway that will get you there more quickly than if you're all contracted about missing a sign or missing an opportunity or getting it wrong or making a mistake, right? When in that contracted state, we basically slow everything down. Things don't flow when we are stressed. So stay out of stress is the number one guidance. Jill said, I'm going to read it up here. Good luck, Susie. Susie says she has to take Moses, who is a dog, by the way, to the vet. Wanted to chat. We'll next time. Okay. Definitely holding space for you and Mose at the vet. I'm just going to flip up here to what Jill wrote in. Jill wrote, a friend, quote unquote, who is bullying me into staying put here, even called the police out to check on my well-being to cause me fear, he hoped. I gave them short shrifts as I knew it was a horrible wind-up. When I called out the friend for his actions, he started crying and begged me to stay his friend. He is a coercive control bully and one of the reasons I am choosing to move away. Hard to relax into trust when I got this crap going on. Yeah, okay, so exactly. So the bully is basically someone who is in deep pain and feels extremely lonely and isolated. And, so with compassion, it doesn't mean you have to stay and help him, by the way, I presume it's a him. But the point is trying to using that as an excuse to move away is not a very empowered reason for moving, Jill. What's much more empowering for you is whether you move or not is not the point. It's the reasons that you move. You want to be moving because you're stepping into joy, not because you're escaping problems, right? Because we never escape problems. That's the point. Problems will chase us. Problems will follow us if we don't deal to them. And this is an awesome opportunity for you to stand in your power and to call him out basically on his pain in a compassionate way, not making him wrong, right? Because he's been abused. That's why he's in pain, right? Whether this lifetime or others. We all have, most of us, right? So understanding that he's expressing his abuse in ways that are discordant. So the point is, if you can speak to the situation in a compassionate way where you stay in your power and in your truth, and at the same time help him see what's going on for himself so that he can improve and set boundaries so that he is no longer adversely influencing you, then you're going to be able to move in a much more effective way. One of the reasons that you probably haven't moved yet is because you haven't dealt to this, right? So I would say it's time to deal to it, right? Talk to this situation so that you could stay in your house and not have this person basically bothering you. That doesn't mean that they can't contact you at all. It just means that you've resolved the situation to the point that any communication that happens is on an equitable front that is basically serving you, not creating problems for you. This is your opportunity to sort that out to some degree, whether that's helping him heal or whether that is setting strong boundaries so that he knows he doesn't have the right to be interfering in your life or even contacting you if it gets to that, right? As opposed to you moving away so that you don't have to speak to that option. Okay, my lovely wife who's on her way home soon on Friday says she's trying to watch from the Cook Islands but the internet is slow. drinking miso soup as it's cold today, only 24 degrees. Yeah, we've got about 8 at the moment here. No, it's probably warmer than that. It's probably 10. But yeah, miso soup's a good thing to drink, honey. Jill said it's not the main reason for moving, honestly, just the benefit. Yeah. Sometimes those side benefits, though, need to be addressed, because it may be not such a benefit. Maybe an escape from something that the universe is giving you as an opportunity to sort out in your current situation. And it might be super important for you on a level that I don't understand or you don't understand, for you to address this, right? It might be an important part of your evolutionary process for you to speak in an empowered way to this situation and this quote-unquote friend, so that you can hold your own, right, in a compassionate and empowered, loving way, rather than to run away and avoid it, and therefore solve the problem through avoidance. Okay. Okay, so I think we answered Zena. What's the best way? It's basically to relax, right? So Sister Melina. I'm not sure if it's Milena or Melina. I'm not very good with names, I have to admit. So, but anyway, sister, I need to... I just moved my cursor and now I can't read. I need to let go and trust what's coming. How to battle fear or just ignore it? Okay, this is a great question. So we don't want to battle fear, nor do we wish to ignore it. We'll just quickly speak to Jill. Jill said he lost his cat last weekend and I talked to him all of the night she passed over, and I would always do that, but let's try. But he's taken to stalking around my house if I don't answer his phone calls. He won't, well, answer them. Answer them and then speak directly that this is not a good time to talk. See, if you don't answer his phone calls, he then in his psychosis, right, starts to worry about you. So you're saying he's stalking around your house, but basically he's worried that you've dropped dead and you're not answering your phone. You know, so if you just try and avoid, the problem's going to come face to face with you. If you speak to the problem when you have the opportunity, like he's on the other end of the phone, it's an easy conversation to have. So he's phoned you, you say, hey, what's going on? Now's not the time to talk. Can we set a time and we can talk about this? I can't have you phoning me all of the time. Whatever it is, whatever your boundaries are, you have to state them, not, you know, just try and avoid by not answering the phone when he calls, right? So you go on to say, he won't respect boundaries I have tried to set, and however bluntly I've tried to say my position. Yeah, okay. Well, not answering is definitely not going to work. So if he keeps phoning, say, hey, if you keep phoning me, I'm going to have to go to the authorities and get a restraining order, because this is not appropriate and you are violating my boundaries and this is abuse. You have to speak plainly and very obviously. Not that you're threatening, but you are basically letting him know that you are prepared to go as far as it needs to go for him to respect you. Right? When you speak very calmly, not from anger, you don't need to get angry with him, just lay it on the line. Hey, you keep phoning me and I've told you it's not appropriate for you to keep phoning me. If you keep doing that, I'll have to get a restraining order and get the authorities involved, because you're not listening to me, right? This is not, whatever you think you have is not love for me. You are a very needy person and it's causing me to want to pull right away from you. Lay it out. Lay it out. And if he keeps phoning, then go through with it. But get a restraining order and sort it out, right? You have to stand in your power. It's not enough to try and run away from these things or avoid answering the phone, etc., because ultimately that will never solve the problem. Okay, well, if you've said what I suggest, then you should get a restraining order and you should phone the police next time he keeps phoning you, right? Because that's what needs to happen. He needs to, if he can't hear it from you, then he needs to hear it from a level of authority that he will respect. Because if you've told him that and then you haven't done it, then you are basically, he's calling your bluff on it. So when people are calling your bluff, you you have to stand up and go through with what you've said, okay? Because that's the only way that they're going to get it. Because if you keep making hollow threats, then they'll keep pushing the buttons. Anyway, so Melina said, I need to let go and trust what's coming. Right, so first and foremost, none of us know what's coming. How to battle fear or just ignore it. So we don't want to battle fear. We don't want to try and push through. It's not sad at all, Jill. It's the best thing for him and it's the best thing for you. So don't be sad that it's the next step. I don't know why you're sad. It's a natural progression, and it's what's going to help him heal. So it's not a bad thing at all. It's a positive thing. It's a positive thing. So put it in that frame, and don't feel bad about it at all. So we don't want to battle the fear, and we don't want to ignore it either. If you ignore fear, it just creates more levels of fear. So we all have, I talked earlier in the call that we all have these levels of doubt. I was right at the start of the call. We all have levels of doubt coming up, and it's our job to speak past it rather than to get contracted in the fear or to try and ignore it and pretend it's not happening. Because if we cut ourselves off from our awareness, because fear is basically a form of awareness, even though we recognize that it is manipulated or influenced by past experiences that may or may not be, what's the right word? When they mean something in today's reality. Relative. They may not be relative, right? Or they may not be valid influences, but they're there nonetheless. If we try and ignore that, then our conscious mind, our logical mind goes, hey, this is dangerous. We're ignoring information that's coming to us. We're ignoring these fears, and we can't help. They just build up. It's like a volcano. It's like suppressing our anger. It doesn't work, right? Ignoring our fears, relevant. Thank you, Jill. Suppressing our fears suppressing our anger is like ignoring our fears. It's going to build up like a volcano, and we're going to have a destructive event when our fears come flooding out that we've been ignoring for so long. Because if we don't at least acknowledge that this flow of information, this information from the past, our fears, is there, then it's not going to release. It's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to get cataloged. It's going to get stored in the subconscious mind till you are capable of recognizing it, acknowledging it. So don't ignore it, definitely, but don't even battle it either. Don't make it a battle. It's not you fighting your fears. Your fears are there to help you. Your fears are there to support you. Your fears are there to keep you safe. Now, it's a matter of you maintaining an empowered attitude to that, so that the fears aren't unduly influencing you in a restrictive way. Some of the fears that are coming up are valid, and it's important for us to recognize it and then to inquire what we can do about it and what is a sensible way of addressing these fears. This is the point. A lot of the fears that are coming up are nonsensical, right? Or extremely tenuous. A lot of them have been, overly influenced or projected at us from society. So when we recognize that and we go, wow, I'm really feeling the fear, and I recognize that it is just all of this stuff that's being, pushed my way, whether it's coming from people around me, whether it's coming from the media, whether it's just coming from the energy of society, I recognize this fear is manipulative, and there's nothing really I can do about it. There's nothing really for me to address here. From that point, you can relax, right? Because you've acknowledged the fear, you've inquired into it, and you've come to a level of satisfaction that there's no action that you need to take based on that level of fear, in which case that fear now has served its purpose, right? Because it's come up, you've looked at it, and you've chosen to take action, which might be no action, or it might be action to align yourself with the outcome that you're desiring, to move forward, to trust, basically. But trust requires maintenance for all of us. Trust requires maintenance for all of us. We need to be willing to keep reinvesting our attention and on our intent to trust that the world is basically giving us the opportunity to express ourselves in the most expansive way. The world is not here to quote unquote keep you safe in your physical body, because that is not the highest expression of your soul, right? We are all going to have experiences in some way or another that we could consider bad, uncomfortable, damaging, dangerous, etc., right? Wounding. We're all going to get wounded from time to time. The point is not to think that that was a bad thing that happened. We all have accidents. We all suffer injuries, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. We're all going to be injured in this ride of life, right? No one gets through life without suffering, quote unquote, without experiencing, I'll use a different word, without experiencing some form of injuries. The point is not to make the injury some sort of mistake, wrongness, or bad thing. They are all opportunities for us to experience this life, to experience our way of coping with those things, to experience our resilience, to experience our tenacity, to experience our divinity, right? We have these experiences which are injurious from a point of view, from a perspective, because that gives us an opportunity. So when we learn to trust, and as I said, this requires maintenance, this requires consistency, continually reminding yourself that I trust the universe to give me opportunities to be my most expansive self. Then when something happens that you would formerly judge as a wrongness, as a bad thing, because it feels injurious to you, it feels like it's injuring you, it feels like it's painful, it's provoked pain in some way, or it's provoked some sort of discordance in your physical, mental, or emotional state of being, you can remember not to put so much wrongness on it, not to beat yourself up for making a mistake, or not to feel victimized by the world that this shouldn't have happened and get all judgmental around it, because you go, what's the blessing in this? What has this come to allow me to achieve, to grow through, to experience? Now, you have to be careful, because a lot of people will think that, that if everything's a blessing, then I'll just let it happen. And therefore you let yourself be abused by others without ever standing up for yourself. That's not the point, right? It's not that you allow people to keep abusing you or to keep injuring you or for dangerous situations to continue. You go, oh, well, injuries are going to happen. Therefore, the people who are doing all this dangerous work, they're chopping trees down and they're falling into my property. That's okay, because it's giving me opportunities. It's giving me opportunities. No, it's giving you the opportunity to fucking stand up for yourself and protect yourself and your family and your property, right? That is an opportunity. So we have to understand that this is not a sort of, I'll just stay meek and mild, trust. Trust is not staying meek and mild and letting life just wash over you and letting other people abuse you. Not at all. It's trusting that when stuff is happening, that it's not wrong that it's happening, but it is your opportunity to stand up and speak and set your boundaries and take actions that from an empowered place of knowing to advocate for the outcome that you do feel is more appropriate to what's important. The point is not to stay meek and mild and huddle inside in fear. It's to let go of the fear, which doesn't mean that you're not going to experience it anymore, right? It's to let go of overly being influenced by the fear so that you can step past it. The more often that you step past your fear, the less influence your fears have over you. And then you can still utilize your fear as a valid stream of information. It's just as valid as what you're seeing going on around you. It's just as valid as what you're reading in the newspaper. It's just as valid as any other stream of information, basically. But well, it's not as valid as what you're feeling in your heart. Or potentially what visions you're being shown in your meditations. There are streams of information that are more valid than others, but there are a lot of streams of information that have a degree of validity to them. And our fears that our subconscious mind is showing to us do have a level of validity. But the point is not to overly inflate that level of validity and not to allow it to be overly influential in how you're choosing to move through the world. So it's about finding a balance, which is not a 50-50 balance or some sort of mythical thing, but dancing with this experience where fears and doubts are consistently with us. Always. I have fears and I have doubts right now about all sorts of things that could happen, right? Thoughts that pop up, feelings of discomfort in my body, normal. The point is, what am I going to do about them? Because for a lot of them, it's not about ignoring them. It's about recognizing them and then expanding out of them, right? Expanding out of the influence, expanding out of holding your attention on them. So I know it sounds like if you take your attention off something, you're ignoring it. So fine lines here. It's like you have to be willing to recognize it, acknowledge it, and then take your attention off if there's nothing that it's giving you further. See, this is the difference between caring about something and worrying about something. Worrying is when you obsess over it, when you allow it to predominate your mentality. And it's generally not helpful because it just creates more and more stress in your body, which then cuts you off more from your knowing, cuts you off more from the confidence to actually do something about it, and creates a situation where you become disempowered and anxious and depressed, etc., right? So, but at the same time, you have to be willing to care. You have to be willing to acknowledge it and to actually put a little bit of effort into analyzing whether it's valid or not, whether it is relatively valid, right, in the current situation, and that requires energy. You know, you can't just take a carte blanche approach. Oh, I'm just ignoring all of that, because it will come back to bite you on the ass. So don't ignore it, and at the same time, don't fight through it. You don't need to argue your way out of these fears. You don't need to disprove them. You don't need to prove that they're not valid. A lot of the time, if it just feels that there's nothing you can do about it, then that is enough. That is enough, right? Trust what you know. Don't battle the fears. Don't make it a fight. Don't try and get rid of them, right? I've been dealing with a situation where a lot of people who are, considered light workers are getting drawn into fighting against darkness. It's a no-win fight. Darkness actually feeds off fight energy. When you fight darkness, you're feeding darkness. Our job is to be loving, but loving is not allowing darkness to do whatever it wants, right? Loving is holding our boundaries without needing to fight, right? Without needing to fight. It's like a good martial artist. A good martial artist very rarely needs to fight because they have the confidence to know that if it comes to a fight, they're capable, right? So we know as beings of light that we can give it to the darkness if it requires. But the point is, we don't go looking to do that, because in looking to do that, in being aggressive towards darkness, we're actually inflating darkness's role and basically keeping it in place. It's the same with fears. If you fight against fears, you're basically feeding the fears. The point is, but at the same time, it's not about totally ignoring them. It's about recognizing them and then taking your attention away, expanding out, putting your attention on what you are advocating for. And then coming back to the analogy of light versus dark, is about, maintaining our attention on advocating for light-filled outcomes rather than thinking that we need to stop the darkness from interfering. Darkness is going to keep interfering. Even when we're right in the height of light in several thousand years' time, and we're in a beautiful light-filled community situation here on this planet, darkness will still be there, and we won't need to fight it, right? Because it will be hiding in the shadows, because the light will be so predominant that darkness will still try to operate. Of course, it will always be here. That's the point. It needs to be the balance, just like we were always here as beings of light when darkness was predominating. They couldn't eradicate us totally. Yeah, they controlled us, but they couldn't eradicate us totally, and we stayed. And we did what we could. Darkness will do the same. So it's not about trying to get rid of it, and it's not valid for us to get rid of it. It's not beneficial for us to get rid of it. It is balancing the universe. So that's an important thing. Trust me. So the point is, don't fight your fears, don't fight the darkness, don't get in this idea that when we get rid of them, then we'll be able to be happy. Our job is to be happy right now, despite all that's going on, and expand our happiness out, and then they will shrink in significance relative to what we are choosing. We advocate for the light, we advocate for our purpose, we advocate for what we feel is loving, and then all of the hate and all of the discordance will lose its relevance relative to us and the communities that we are building. This is the way forward. It's not about ignoring them. It's not about fighting them. It's about striking a middle path where we just advocate for what we desire and we allow them to do what they need to do. Awesome, my friends. I think I've blown my time out of the water. Yeah, it's 9:42. So much love to you all. I think actually I did miss a comment from Jill that scrolled through while I was in mid-frame. Jill wrote, I guess I had a panic attack with all of the mounting fears, which were very constricting. Is that acknowledging fear? Is that acknowledging fear too? Yeah, definitely. Definitely, if you acknowledge that, the fears mounted up to the point that it created a panic attack, which is basically an intense stress response in your physical body because the fears weren't being addressed in a constructive way, so that your body actually had to get your attention to say, hey, we're really worried about this shit. So it put you into a state of discordance, non-functionality to highlight what it was worried about, right? What these fears were projecting. So the point is, cathartic releases such as panic attacks are valid. What's important is though, moving forward, is to develop techniques that help you head off the mounting fears earlier rather than later, so that you don't keep ignoring them, that you acknowledge them for what they are, and you breathe your way into a relaxed state of putting it all in perspective, rather than suppressing it and then having an explosion / a panic attack, anxiety situation. So yes, my friends, and please let go of trying to measure how well you're doing at this. It is incredibly intense right now. Don't be too hard on yourselves. Be compassionate. Many of us are going to have experiences of quote unquote what we consider failure at staying relaxed, out of panic, out of anger. Many of us are going to have explosive moments or destructive moments or intense moments as we progress through this rather brutal purification that we're all going through, both individually and as a society. So be kind. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to other people who are acting discordantly at this moment, because we're all having to face some stinky shit that has been suppressed in our field for a long time. So yeah. It's not easy. So trust that it's not easy, but that doesn't mean that we can't succeed as well. But just don't be too hard on yourself. Bye for now. Much love.